In this video, I wanted to talk about conic sections, circles, and their standard equation. So the standard equation of a circle, let's say it is at 3, 2. This is the center. And we'll say it looks something like this, not perfect, but let's pretend the radius here is 4. So the standard form of a circle is similar to what you've probably recognized as when we were talking about parabolas in their vertex form. We would talk about h comma k. H comma k will come up a lot in all of these conic sections that we'll go over, and it will be the center for all of the conic sections. So, or the vertex for the parabola. So the standard is always minus in here. So we talked about that a lot for parabolas. The standard is minus. So for circles, here it is. It is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And r is just the radius. So you can see here for this circle that we've drawn, the center, h comma k, is at 3, 2, x comma y, h comma k. So you can see we just plug in h and k. We're going to keep the minus because that's our standard. So for this particular circle with a center at 3, 2, that equation would be x minus 3 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals, and then it needs to equal the radius squared. So for us, the radius is 4. If we square it, it would be 16. So if you are given an equation, you could graph it from there, or if you are given a graph, you could write the equation from there. So let's do a couple of examples. If I have this example here, so again, our h and our k is here. We have to remember that the standard is minus. So for this particular one, h would be a -6 because it would be minus -6 would end up with x plus 6. So whenever you see a plus here, that means the h or k would be negative because we subtract a negative and it becomes positive. So in this case, h is -6 and k is +4. So our center would be here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 if we needed to draw it to scale, and a +4. So at -6, +4. That would be our circle center. Then we know that this equals the radius squared. So if the radius squared equals 4, we know to get rid of the square, we can take the square root. That would be the square root of both sides. Square root of 4 we know is 2. So in that case, our radius is 2. If you needed to draw this on a graph, you could go down 2, over 2, up 2, and over 2. And that would be our circle. So that one's a little bit smaller. So that would be a way to graph given an equation. So now let's talk about if you are given an equation that is not perfectly in that standard form. So we will talk about how to get it there. So if you were given something like this, let's say 20, and let's say it equals 5. So if you were given a mess like this and you weren't sure what to do, and actually that should be a y. If you were given something like this, and it might not even be in this order, but what you would want to do is think about, okay, I have 2 x terms and I have 2 y terms, and then I have a guy who doesn't really belong. So I'm going to immediately move him over to the other side, -20. And these little guys, we want to complete the square. So if you remember how to complete the square, if you're not sure, you can check out one of my videos. I'll link it below. But my favorite thing to remember is my blank. This is the first step, and then that reminds me, oh, I got to put something in the blank. And so essentially we're making our perfect little quadratics because I want it to be the perfect square. So what goes in the blank? It is b over 2 squared. And if you forget what a, b, and c means, it's ax squared plus bx plus c. So our b term here is this second term. Even though they only gave us 2 terms, we're going to figure out c, and that's what we have to figure out. So c is really this b over 2 squared. So I'm going to take my b, which in this case is 4 over 2, and I square it. So 4 divided by 2 is 2 squared. That is 4. So I'm back to 4. And the trick here is, what is my perfect little square for this? It is the b over 2 is what goes here. So you could try to think about this logically. Essentially what we're doing is foiling. You can always check, foil to check. So this would be x plus 2 times x plus 2, right? That would be x plus 2 squared. So essentially my first term would be x squared, my outer would be 2x, inner would be 2x, those add up to 4x, and then the last term would be 4. So that's how I know that that works out. So you can always double check with FOIL to make sure you've got the perfect little square here. So that is my x. So now let's do the y. We'll switch colors here. So here, again, my first step is always give myself a blank. So I'm going to give myself a blank. And over here, we already moved the 20. So 5 minus 20, that would be a negative 15 over here so far. So what goes in the blank for the y's? Again, it's b over 2 squared. For us, b is 6. 6 over 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So what goes in my perfect little square then is the b over 2. So the b over 2 was 3. So in that case, it would be y plus 3 squared. So you can start to see here that we're starting to get over here on the left our nice little standard equation for a circle. So I've got my x part squared and my y part squared. So now I've got to remember that I've just randomly pulled out of thin air a positive 4 and a positive 9. That's what I've added to the left. So to balance everything out, I have to add the same thing to the right. So I'm going to add 4 and add 9 to the right-hand side as well. So that would be minus 15 plus 4 plus 9. So minus 15 plus 4, that would be minus 11, and plus 9, that would still give me negative 2. So that probably doesn't work out. This probably is not a real equation. We would want this to be positive because we know that r squared has to equal, or that this term has to equal r squared, and that we would need to square root it. So we would never get a negative over here. So this is probably a bad example. Let's make this 10. So that would make this negative 10. So negative 10 plus 13, that would be a positive 3. So still not a great radius, because that would mean if r squared equals 3, that means the radius is square root of 3. So not a great number, but it's still a decimal and it's positive. So that works out for us. So again, here is our x minus h and y minus k. So our h comma k, or our center, would be at negative 2, negative 3 for that one. And then our r is square root of 3. So that is solving for circles using the standard equation and using either the equation to make the graph or the graph to make the equation. Also completing the square if we're not given a standard form of the circle equation. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to comment below.